podcast of Tibetan Kung Fu. Thank you for listening to episode number 9, Cut Through the Chaos, 4 Steps to Getting Through the Fog. I am Seafood T.W. Smith, and I appreciate you including us as part of your day. In today's podcast, we're going to look at 4 steps to learn how to cut through the chaos. I can honestly say that these steps help me change my life, or at least help me get through difficult pieces of my life, and then also realize that when you want to change things, you have to have an intention to change and then a behavior that exhibits that intention. I want to thank the subscribers that we have. I noticed that we have a few new subscribers on our Stitcher and iTunes. I wanted to share with you all a moment yesterday with my son. It seems somewhat relevant, at least as a father, watching a young man grow up. As many of the students know, Kian, my son, we've been going to Duke football games for years now. Well, when we first began, Duke was not winning a whole lot of games. Going to Duke football games is a place where I could take my son and felt comfortable and safe, and that he could have the experiences without necessarily be worried about a bunch of people drinking too much or being over rowdy or a lot of profanity and things like that. But yet there was still a lot of spirit and passion. So for years now, he goes there, he watches the young men play. Coach Cutliff is wonderful. Both the coaches and the players there always have enough time to interact with the fans. In fact, Coach Cutliff wrote Kian back. Kian had written him a little note telling him how much he enjoyed going. And Coach Cutliff took the time to write him back, and that meant the world to Kian. Well, the reason I bring this up is because yesterday was Kian's first day of football practice. Now, he gets out there with probably about 75, 80 other kids, and for almost 3 hours, they run them and they work them. And the coaches are doing exactly what good coaches are supposed to do. They're pushing. Now, I got to watch my son go out there and work, sweat. He fell down on many occasions, and there were a couple of times I didn't know if he was going to make it when they were running, but he kept working. And when he got done, sweat was pouring off of him. His face was beet red, And I said, well, son, what do you think? And he said, I can't wait for the day that I get to wear the uniform and get to play a game. And the reason I bring this up is because when was the last time you wanted something so bad with such a fire that you were willing to persevere no matter what they threw at you to see it through? Because you knew that if others could do it somehow, some way, you'd figure it out. Well, watching Kian yesterday reminded me of that feeling, to be prepared to work through whatever I need to. Now, to the meat of the podcast today. There are times in our lives that trouble, chaos, and problems can feel about as thick as a blanket. We feel like we're working, we're struggling, but we're going nowhere. Let's think of it that you're on a ship and you find that you're lost, and you go to the captain and you ask the captain, "Sir, which direction were we headed?" And he pauses, tilts his head a little bit at you, and gives you that puzzled look and says, "I'm not really sure." Who wants to be on a boat where the captain doesn't know where you're going and you're lost, caught in a fog? When we're trying to cut through the chaos and finding the steps in order to get us through the fog of life, the first thing we have to do, step 1, is to slow down, and slow way down. We ask the question of ourselves, what direction was I headed? Now, you may not have an answer to that question, and that's okay. There's a reason that we slow way down and we ask ourselves what direction we're headed. I call it the illusion alert. The phenomenon that when you're in a thick fog and you can only see 50 to 100 yards out in front of you, every object that you see in that fog will be almost twice the size that it actually is. And everything that is moving will appear to be moving faster than it actually is. Now, when you combine that with a little bit of desperation, dare say anxiety, everything's going to look bigger, everything's going to look faster, and for the most part, it's an illusion. That's why we have to remind ourselves, slow way down. Let's ask ourselves a question, what if you don't slow down? What if you just keep revving up? Usually one of 3 things. You're going to be wrecked, sank, or in a deeper abyss. Some folks will go through depression. They start eating for comfort, stack on 10 or 20 pounds, smoke, drink, drugs, distraction. The list goes on and on. Slowing down is part of the things that you would try to do through your mindful meditation, Tai Chi, things like that. Even walking some of the Bakwa, it helps slow you down so that you can bring your mind back in. Step 2, recent recall. This is where we drop the anchor. You ask yourself the question, how did you get here? It didn't just appear. Did the fog come to you, or did you go into it? Now, if you have a direction and you look out in front, you may see the fog, you may see the storm. You know you got to get through it in order to keep moving down your direction to achieve your destination. Now, if you didn't have a direction, more than likely you were just kind of floating around like a stick out there and the fog came to you. Dropping anchor gives us enough time to ask, how did we get in here? Did we go into it? Did it come to us? Because it could be that we do not need to cut through the fog. If we drop anchor, maybe the fog will cut through us. Sometimes standing still is the best movement that we can do. While the anchor's dropped, it's not downtime. It's not relaxed time. We have to get a better feel for some of the things that we may need to be doing while we are still. So we've slowed down, asked ourselves what direction were we headed, became aware of the illusions. We've dropped anchor. We asked ourselves, how do we get into it? Because we don't want to go into circles. We don't want to wreck or sink. Step 3 is to orientate. Use your senses and your experiences. Listen, feel, smell. The reason we do this is so that we can find the nearest shorelines that we can orientate ourselves to. By finding fixed shorelines, what I mean is that we have an orientation to things that we believe to be as close to stable and true as possible. Any sort of landmarks or bearings that we could get. In our personal lives, people and things that you believe and trust. People that you trust in, whether it's a preacher, a teacher, mom, dad. It could be someone who you don't really even personally like, but you always trust the fact that they're honest with you, even if it's brutal, for example. Remember that jagged shorelines are a lot easier to remember than the smooth ones. So ask yourself, what are your fixed shorelines? Where is it in your health, in your commitment to a spiritual path or a religious path? There's a number of fixed shorelines that you might be able to orientate yourself to so that you get a better fix about where you are. If you're still having a little trouble, go to the next question. What did you notice before you found yourself in the fog? Out in the sea, in the old days, before there was a compass that was being used in sea navigation in 1100 AD, the old-timers knew the sea. Different creatures live in different parts of the water. They could orientate themselves by what they saw, like a specific type of whale swimming in the sea. They also knew that rainy wind usually flows clockwise and could adjust their sails accordingly. When we're trying to orientate ourselves through our senses, we listen. The sounds of an ocean wave breaking upon the shore. Feel. Through touch, the sailors could sense how fast they were going and the direction of the wind. Smell. Moist sea air can carry the fragrance and odors of a fire, plants, and trees for great distances off of land. All of these things can give you a bearing of where you are. It's important here for me to point out that we did not ask why. I tell the students a lot of times why is a very slippery question because it often will send a ship into a circle. Even if you ask yourself, why did you get in this fog? Why did you end up in this place? And you were provided the sacred answer. What are you going to do with it? You still have to let it go in order to move forward. I always use the example, why is like the dog chasing its tail. It realizes it, it sees it, it chases it, and it eventually catches it, and the next thing it has to do is let it go. It's the only thing it can do in order to do anything else, is to let it go. Yet it could have done that 20 minutes prior to chasing its tail. How and what are much better question starters. How am I going to use it? How am I going to get out of this? What do I need to move forward? What can I learn from this? Those are the types of things that give better precursor questions, or what I call it, so that you can move forward rather than trying to analyze while you're spinning. Okay, recap. Step 1, slow down. Ask what direction was I headed. Step 2, drop anchor. How did you get in it? Step 3, orientate. Where are my fixed shorelines? Now we're at step 4. Navigate. Remember here, you don't need to have a destination. Just ask the question, what direction should I go? We need to choose a direction. If you're not sure, check your wake. Where did you come from? More than likely, that's not where you want to go back to. Did you get any sense of a shoreline during the orientation? Do you need to move closer to your health or closer to some structure that has always served you well? If you didn't, then pick a spot ahead. Put the sun on your right eye every dawn. Make sure it sits on your left shoulder at dusk every day. This will give you the time to figure out which direction you need to go, but at least you'll have a direction. Now, for you students, I use the Maritime Meditation here to tell the whole story and let you walk through in your mind the narrative of all the processes, enliven your senses so that you can get a better feel to how to walk yourself through the fog. I hope you enjoyed the 4 steps to cutting through the fog. It means a lot to me to do a good job in teaching and sharing. And if you apply the skills that we talked about today, I can just about guarantee you that it will make a difference. If you have an opportunity, I really would appreciate it if you go to Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, any of the places there, or just send me an email and let me know what you think about the episode. Practice every day to be a better person first. That's what Kung Fu is all about, first and foremost, is making sure that we work to be a better person first, better martial artist down the line. If you have an opportunity and you're interested, I'd love to meet you. The Yang Nan Tai Chi course, the Kung Fu Boot Camp, or the Mindful Meditation Workshop are all coming up in the next month. All the links are on the website. Or you can go to www.tibetankungfu.net/podcast, and it'll take you directly to the latest podcast, and it'll pop up right there for you. All right, so before we close, slow down, way down, drop anchor, orientate, navigate, avoid why for right now. You have all the time you need to ask yourself why after you're on a safe shoreline and you know which direction you're going to be headed. I hope you enjoyed episode number 9. My name is Sifu T.W. Smith, and I really appreciate you joining us.